Hola mis amigos, ¿cómo estamos hoy? Buenos días. Todo está bien aquí, pero otra vez nosotros tenemos más de mierda nieve. Ugh. Freaking snowed last night. You know, you think you're getting ready to plant stuff. You want to get ready. As I showed you in the last episode, I did a quick walkthrough. We also got a bunch more stuff now. We got some hazelnuts. I'm planting some hazelnuts in here. Found a species that will actually do well up here, the American hazelnut, which I'm excited because it's an American tree. More like a bush shrub. But it gives off some real nice sized hazelnuts. And it's good for the wildlife around, right? You plant not for yourself, but for everything around you. That's the whole connection of doing like a permaculture situation or a forest garden. Once we can go out there and I can show you what I've done, and hopefully you can replicate it on your own land, in your own hemisphere, we'll have some good times out in the forest. Take your mind off all this crap that's happening. Namely, what's happening right now and actually has been happening for a while, and that's why the subject of this is the Great Taking, or what I prefer to call the Big Steal. See, because David Rogers Webb is correct. It's a great taking, because if it's just a great taking, that means it's legal. But you'll start to find out more and more. There's a lot of things that are legal. You know, like the murder of a bunch of politically undesirable in Germany in the 1930s and 1940s, right? In the concentration camp. That was legal. But was it morally right? Was it justice? Was there any justice involved in there? No. That's how the laws can be used against you when the evil cabal takes over. And the question is, what can you do about this? So I'm going to talk about the great taking, the big steal, the Seneca cliff, or the Seneca paradox. That's very important for you to understand right now, because those of you who are under the illusion that everything seems to be fine, especially you people who are playing the game of Wall Street, the trap of Wall Street. I'll talk a little bit about my introduction into Wall Street. It actually happened right after I was released from Vietnam. But just to give you a recap for people who, this is your first episode, you don't really know who I am. When I was 18, I left UC Berkeley, and my voyage at that time, which was to become a Marine officer, a pilot who was going to fly the F-18 that was just coming out in 1983. And I took off to go cover the wars in Cambodia. Vietnam and Cambodia were still fighting the war. With the Khmer Rouge were still fighting the Vietnamese. At the same time, Colonel Bo Greitz was going in after MIAs, trying to find out what had happened to American servicemen who were lost in Vietnam. A very, very sad story.
How could the United States government allow Americans to be held prisoner of war, held hostage? How could we, I mean, it boggles the mind for me to believe that my elected officials are actually allowing this to happen. It frightens me and it makes me angry simultaneously.
It started out in World War II. That Senate report says that 20,000 Americans were liberated by the Soviets on the Eastern Front from Nazi Germany, but they were never repatriated.
One of the reasons that I later, when I was a journalist covering Central America, and then I became a paramilitary officer myself, fighting communists, running pseudo operations, I had a standing order that I would not be taken prisoner again because of my experiences in Vietnam, and more importantly, what I learned about what happened to the American MIAs. Yeah. Don't get taken prisoner, which is very interesting because right now in Iran, it's the whole idea of going and pulling our men out. And then I keep on hearing about we always go get our men out. No, you don't. That's the bullshit about it. There's all this bullshit about people. You're going to fight for your country. You're not fighting for your country. You're fighting for the bankers. You're fighting for the bankers because the bankers are the ones who start these fucking wars. And they've been doing this for thousands of years. They've been doing this all the way back to the Romans. It's this cabal. This is a cabal. And it's actually not one cabal. You got to understand, it's this cabal that just keeps on getting bigger and bigger because of all the parts. But what they are is they're a parasite upon society. They don't do anything. I was really enjoying this talk that Webb had, where he describes what I've been saying for years. These people are not innovative. They find out what works and they just keep on replaying it over and over and over, generation after generation. David Webb goes back to World War I. I go further back to the Spanish-American War. Spanish-American War was actually the first war of imperialism. And guess what? That was a false flag too. Remember the Maine? Yeah. Everybody thought it was a bomb that was planted by the Spanish. There was no bomb, as we found out later. No, the boiler blew up. So actually, who was the engineer on that boat? Who was the engineering officer who said, oh, let's just close it down so that the pressure builds and then it'll just blow up itself, right? That's how you get something going. And then it gives people back in D.C. to say, hey, the Spanish attacked us. Kind of like when you have a bunch of Israeli IDF and Mossad dancing around, watching while the towers are coming down. And after the towers come down because they were doing a victory dance for all the explosives that they planted in those buildings. Yeah, if you think that those two planes took down those buildings, you're freaking out of your mind. But for those of us who know how to blow up things and we know how to do controlled demolition, yeah, that was a controlled demolition. That's why everything went straight down like that. Yeah. Recognize what you see, and then these people can't lie to you. And they can't get you to do things. They can't keep on trying to get us into a war in Iran, which now we're in a war in Iran. So what is the Great Taking? So the Great Taking is they are basically going to take all your shit. And the way they're doing it is because they are using the laws in order to basically make it legal to steal from you. So they're not just happy with doing the recycling, the regurgitation of creating wars, where what they do is they created an economic depression, and then people get hungry. So any opportunity to feed yourself, i.e. join the military, is jumped at. So you have all these people who survived. Like if my dad was a little bit older, he would have gone into World War II. He got Korea. That in itself was another one. Especially if you find out how the Syngman, I think he was the first president of South Korea, how that actually he'd been groomed for years by missionaries, of all people, to become the president when South Korea would become an independent and be separate. But then you'd have two sides. See, because it needs two sides. This is how these people play. They always create two sides. They've been doing this, as I said, for centuries. Like, I fought in the Cold War. The Cold War? What was that? Oh, that was the Rothschilds bankrolling and creating the Bolsheviks. And you find out who are the people who comprised most of the Bolsheviks and what they end up doing, wiping out all the Christians and all the Orthodox Russians, blowing up their churches, murdering their people in their villages. Trotsky, going from west to east. If you get a chance, go watch Dr. Zhivago with Omar Sharif and Julie Christie. Yeah, Julie Christie. And Julie Christie's husband, who was basically a rendition of Trotsky, where he was that guy going from west to east in the train. And he would go to this whatever village next along the railroad. And he would say, are you loyal to the Tsar? Or are you willing to become good Bolsheviks? Tovarich, yeah? And if you said you were still white, if you were still with the Tsar, they freaking annihilated everybody there. They genocided everybody. And this is the thing about how governments are used in order to commit acts of atrocity. Look what happened in this country. It was legal to go out and kill Apache. It was legal to go out and kill Cheyenne. And it's legal until the point that people realize it's immoral. For instance, the Sand Creek Massacre. That's actually the first time after that was committed. Yeah. After that was committed, then people woke up and said, how could you go and kill? Because basically, the warriors were not there. They killed old men, women, and their children. They bayoneted, they cut them down. Kit Carson down in with the Navajo. It was the Navajo he went out and killed. They went out and killed. And you read the reports of how they cut the breasts off the women and played baseball with the breasts of these Navajo women that they'd killed and dismembered and maimed. And that was legal. Right? So now, it's kind of like all the plundering that's been done. I've been saying this. Catherine Austin Fitz has been saying this. All the plundering they've been doing overseas, that we've been doing overseas in the United States, that everybody's benefited from. You got fat and happy. You got soft. And they're relying on that. Because it's kind of like, the pigs well, this year I'm not raising pigs, but it's like the pigs I have on my land. We got tons of it in the freezer. And we've sold. But it's like you fatten up those pigs, and they're all fat and happy, and they're just all happy to see you, and they got their pretty little eyes. And I do my own killing. Why? Because I want to make sure it's done right. The right way you kill a pig, here's how you kill a pig properly. None of this stuff. This is the reason I can't stand eating pig that comes from a freaking factory. You know why? Because I know how they kill them. And after I tell you how they kill them, you're not going to want to do it. You're not going to want to buy pig from a factory. You're going to hope that you've got a farmer who does the same thing that I do, which is I make them all fat and happy. To the point that I almost name them. I don't name them anymore. I named one of my sows, and I thought because I was going to continue to breed her, but she broke a femur, and I had to put her down. I was freaking in tears. I was crying my eyes out because I had to put her down. So that's why I don't name my pigs anymore. Never have. Since then. I might refer to them as pig or piggy, which is basically saying pork. But the way you do it is you never separate them. See, this is the problem. What do they do in the factory pig factories and the cattle factories? They separate them from the herd. So that's, first of all, that's the initial moment of stress. So they're being pulled away from everybody around them. So stress. So that's stress now going into your meat. Then they're put into a metal cage and they're restrained and they can't do anything. Right? So now you got a next level. And then hopefully the guy does it right. I do my best to do it right. It doesn't always happen. Something happens. That's why I used to just put it right here. There's the cross where it's from base of the ear to the eye on a pig. And you make a cross. And you aim for that point right where it crosses. It goes right into the noggin. 22. And I've tried it with a 22 long rifle. I don't do that anymore. I do it with a 22 Win Mag. So a little bit more damage if you're going to do head cheese. Oh well. I'd rather just make sure that the animal has no suffering whatsoever. Because what happens is you take the shot, drops them. But see, they're not dead yet. They're in shock. And that's why you have to bleed them. You bleed them for two reasons. You may notice this when you go and buy a ham. You get a ham and you see all these little blood spots all over in the flesh. What it means is that pig was not properly bled. The reason you bleed the pig is for two reasons. It gets all the testosterone, it gets all the hormones out, gets as much blood out as you can, but also it relieves the pressure. Because when an animal dies, there's a bunch, because now the heart's not pushing, but it has to go somewhere. But it's not flushing. It's not going through the capillaries and the veins, etc., in the manner that it was before, because the brain was running that. Well, you just knocked out the brain. So you need to quickly and immediately relieve that pressure. If you don't, what happens is you get this bursting. And that's what you see in the ham. So I've just educated on why you see that. Does it affect the taste of the meat? No. But I think it does, because it means that something was not done right. Okay? So that's the reason I like to kill my own pigs. Not that I like to, but I feel responsible to do it. Because it means I'm going to do the best thing I can to make sure that animal did not suffer. I can't stand suffering, especially in animals. You're going to kill it. Do it right. Make it as fast as possible. And the whole idea, this is the whole idea that there's life and death. This is when I was a drug and alcohol, rehab counselor, and I specialize in helping people deal with PTSD, especially people who have been in combat. Because when you go and kill a human being, you're doing something totally unnatural to your species, which you don't kill your own species, right? What is good killing is when you go and kill something in order to eat. That's the cycle of life. That's the thing that you go kill something, you eat it. And that cycle, subconsciously, your mind accepts that and appreciates that. But when you go and kill somebody, and that person's just killed because of a belief system, or the idea that they're doing the same thing, that they're trying to kill you for the same reason of a belief system, the belief system is hijacked into going and killing people in war. There's a time to fight when you're the one who's defending. That's why when we've gone into these imperial wars all over, we no longer were the United States anymore under the Constitution. Our Constitution was designed to make sure that we only protect our borders. Who does that? Switzerland. They don't go and fight wars everywhere. Sweden, until now, would not go and fight wars. They made money. Both of these countries made money off arms. I have no problems with that. If there are other people who want to go and kill themselves, make money. Sell them ammunition. Sell them weapons. But you don't go over and create the wars for them. And that's what this evil cabal does. They go and create the wars, and then they profit off the wars. And that's where this evilness comes from. This is the why. And this is why now they're trying to thin us out. Because it's all about suppression. Because they have so much, remember, they have so much money. They don't really care about money. They care about power and control. And what it really comes down to is suppression. Suppression of the people. And that's why there's the big thinning that has been occurring. And I hate to say this, a lot of you people who got the mosquito bite, because you didn't pay attention to what people are trying to tell you, which is it's bullshit. There are ways to hopefully repair it, and there's a lot of doctors who are trying to help people repair that. But I've seen the people who just ignored it, and they thought everything was cool, and they got booster after booster. And actually what we found out in the research, remember I've told you before, is the boosters don't really affect the curvature of the mortality. It's the first one that hits you. It's the first shot that kills you. The other ones are just follow-up shots that don't really do anything. Except create the illusion that it's all there in order to help you. Did you know that your body is one of the most powerful and amazing things? And that medicine has been modified and hijacked, going all the way to Rockefeller, just with our education system. Remember, 1910 was a very powerful time in terms of evilness. That's the time when Rockefeller and the cabal put in motion the machinery to steal our education and steal our medicine. Up until then, there was true medicine. And it was a lot of it was homeopathic. It was based on understanding of what the earth could provide for us. For those who believe in God, God created all these opportunities. When people say that we left Eden, we didn't leave Eden. We ignored Eden. I believe it's not the idea that Adam and Eve left. It's that they stopped accepting the divine knowledge, which is the plants and the animals, everything that was put on this planet to help us. And we made that separation from that. And that's actually what happened in the industrial age. When the industrial age was created, yes, it created all these tools. But did it create the tools, or did it just mass produce the tools? Think about that. And it mass produced the tools so a very small group of people could live off the labor, off the masses. That's a form of slavery. Because what was it before? You lived off your creativity and your ability to produce, whether it's going out and planting things or being a blacksmith or being an engineer. You created and built things. You designed it, you created, just like Henry Ford. That's why Henry Ford, I think, was very different from other of the, quote, wealthy elite. And he did try to protect people in various things that he had done. And he got vilified for it because he was removing the veil, trying to show who these people are. who have been destroying this world and enslaving the people. And now they've done it through the currency so efficiently. And for those of you who think this is just a anti-Semitic thing, first of all, the people who are in Israel, they're not Semites. Well, the people who are in Israel, who are the Arabs and the Palestinians, those are the Semites, genetically, DNA speaking. Think about that. Lock that in your mind. The people who've taken over there and invaded, those are Russians. Those are Khazarians. Those are people who have a very, very dark history that the Bulgarians and the Turks are very well aware of. They know who the Khazarians were and how these people were driven out and continue to move around. And the idea that they converted to Judaism and they have used it to their ends. That's the evil part about it. Good Jews, the ones who actually practice and don't try to use it. See, that's the thing. All these people who are using it to evil ends, they're actually atheists. These are people like Karl Marx, Jewish, atheist Jew. Theodor Herzl, Jew, atheist Jew. And why is it that the ones who are the most friendly with the Zionists are actually the anti-Jews, the people who don't want Jews in their country? That's why they were so happy to dump them in Israel. And it's not dumping Jews like genetic, quote, Jews or Semites that they like to use. That was actually the terminology that was amplified. It was created in the 1800s, but the one that really got going, and they made laws against, quote, Semites, that was hijacked by the Khazarians, the Ashkenazi Jews, the Khazarians, was in Russia. It was the Bolsheviks who made it actually illegal. Kind of like what they're doing now. Remember what Alexander Solzhenitsyn said? Don't become like the Soviet Union. Well, guess what? We are the Soviet Union. And we are the Soviet Union because it's the whole plan in the same way that the evil cabal. And it's not just the Rothschilds. We're talking, I mean, there's so many. I've been asked to break this down, and it's really hard because you can't even start with the Rothschilds. There was something before the Rothschilds. And the Illuminati is actually the Rothschilds started the Illuminati. I'm trying to get through this book. Remember, this book was written in 1798. I've given you links in the past. Remember, everything that I do, I'm a traditional, when it comes down to it, even though I didn't go to school for journalism until I came back from actually working at it, I was a returning adult student when I got my degree. Actually, that's how I was able to get out so quickly, because I actually was able to count credits for work experience to get my degree in journalism from San Francisco State, right? But I'm well read through work experience. That's how you learn. That's why I believe more that apprenticeships are better than going to university, because you go and work for somebody. And that's what you end up doing anyway. When you go to university, they still don't trust you. It just shows that you actually were willing to stay at a place for 3 to 4 years, or for some people 5 or 6 years. And then they could count on that you're not going to leave the company after you learn what you're going to learn to the company, which is the real information you're supposed to learn. So I bypassed that when I was 18 years old, and I went to Thailand, and then I was covering the Hmong Hill tribe people fighting, still trying to get the country back after we bailed on them and used them during the war, right? The CIA did. And then the Khmer Rouge, fighting with the Vietnamese. Well, it's kind of good that they got rid of the frickin' Khmer Rouge, but that was part of the plan. Ho Chi Minh, Pol Pot. Ho Chi Minh knew it, and General Yap, they knew what frickin' of psycho that Pol Pot is. Remember I told you in the last one that Pol Pot and Alex Karp are the same kind of psychology? They come from the idea where they're going to go and help all these people, and then they end up fucking killing all these people. They put them at peace. Yeah. 6 feet under. In a mass grave. Yeah. Murdered by their own children. Yeah. Bullet in the back of the head. Oh, if they were willing to spend the bullet. The back of the head. Remember, I became friends with Joe Galloway. Joe Galloway, we were soldiers once and young. General Moore, the famous Ia Drang battle. Joe and I became friends because in 2000, I was beginning to work on a movie script about Sean Flynn. Because Sean Flynn, if you read my book, The Bamboo Chest, again, links in the first pinned comment. I put all my sources so that you can follow up. This is traditional journalism. See, I notice all these people are like reporting to you and like the latest news, but they keep their sources quiet. That's called glory whoring. That's like, look at me, look at me, look at me. It's all about me. I'm not here for that shit. I've done that. I've been famous. I've been famous. The whole idea when I came back from Vietnam, to really understand fame. You know, like, if you listen to Joe Rogan, ooh, Joe Rogan, do you know who Joe Rogan? If you're not listening to podcasts, you don't know who Joe Rogan is. But in 1983, 1984, if you read a newspaper or watched TV news or listened to radio and you were into world events, you knew who Freddie Graham Jr. was. Yeah. That was me when I was 18. They called me Freddie Graham because my dad was Fred. And I go by Cork. That's a whole deep story about my connection to the Oglala people. And that's the name, part of the name, Corky, of a child of a Oglala family who had died in 41, and that name was given to me, Cork. And so I had respect to that family that, quote, adopted me. Pretty, some people might believe or not be willing to go that deep into it, but it's a very profound experience. Which is, I know from personal experience, there is reincarnation. For those of you who have questions, like reincarnation where you remember your previous funeral. Yeah, this is the first time I've talked about it. When I write my book, The Red Road Home, that's about the spiritual experience that I had when I came back from the war. But also when I was in the war in Central America, and I was having precognitive events, you know, like this right here that I talked about, where you see, I documented it, which is the sniper was doing push-ups, and I heard a voice says he's going to get it. And I was compelled to go and take a picture of him doing this. So I'm doing layovers again. I said I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to have to edit so you can see what I'm talking about, which is, here's a photo that I felt compelled to take of him. And what the sign says is, Las minas son para los oficiales de cerca. Said, soldiers, the mines are for the officers, the landmines are for the officers' desert. And this was coming into a town called Las Arañas. I've been in a lot of battles around that place. This one, yeah. But anyway, so that was on a Wednesday, and then on Friday we came back through this village, and he loses his foot. He steps on a landmine. But I felt so compelled. So I heard a voice. So that was what, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm trying to remember how it would. So Wednesday I hear the voice. Then I feel compelled to take a picture of him as we come into the village on Thursday. And then on Friday we're coming back through the village and he blows up the landmine. So there's a subconscious. And this is the reason I even bring this up is because deep inside you, you know this great taking is happening. Because then it starts to make sense, all this craziness that's happening with Trump, and he's supposed to be the peace president. He's not supposed to get us into these wars. And you see the confundity, how confounded he is in his mind as he's doing these things, because he's being told what to do. Our leadership has been controlled from the outside by enemy operators, foreign agents. And I tell you, even the Israelis, the Jews, they're foot soldiers. In the way that we've been foot soldiers for this fucking whole empire cabal to go and plunder around the world. It's chain of command. It goes up and it goes up and it goes up to the Israelis. From the Israelis up to the Rothschilds. Who's above the Rothschilds? You ever asked that one? Who's further back? People say it's the Vatican. Okay, so who is it before the Vatican? Does it go back to Solomon and his children and the marriage with the three wives, and I forget who that was? Jesus. I mean, we're going back. We're going back to like the Queen of Sheba. Yeah, Queen of Sheba. Remember the famous Queen of Sheba. And the gods that she was praying to. But all these wives, that these Israeli kings, these Canaanites, these Edomites, and the king and their wives, who they prayed to Baal, to Moloch. This is how it goes back, and that's where evilness comes from. where you are coming from light, or you come from darkness, or where you go into darkness, as people do when you go into war, as I have been, both as an observer, as a journalist, as a child, living in Saigon, as I have said before. Remember, I told one of the CEOs I was working for, and we used to go out fishing for salmon. I said, you know what, I just realized I've been in war from the first memories of life, of the Tet Offensive, 1968, watching the war in Vietnam happen, and then going from that until my final days at the end of 1989, where I lost my fiancée in the frickin' Tet Offensive of San Salvador, and my unborn child. I don't even talk. It's like, That's why it's been so hard to write this latest book, because I'm writing about this stuff. I go through this. I've been asked, do you write books to help with your PTSD? Yes, I do. And it's not a disorder, it's a response. That's why in my book, The Bamboo Chest, I relabel it post-traumatic stress response. It's a response. It's not a disorder. Healthy people who have traumatic experience in their lives respond in a certain manner, which is you have things, psychological anchors that bring you back. Like that's why there's war movies that I don't watch. Or there's some interactive emotional stuff that I don't need to watch because I've had those emotional experiences in real life. I don't need to live that. But it's interesting that people need that. That's why we have scary movies. That's why we have dramas that cause people to go in and get so freaked out. That's what's so wild about this. So I want to, I love Hemingway because, Hemingway is one of the writers that I studied for my writing style. And you may have noticed, and it's been a tribute to that influences on my writing of Jack London, Ernest Hemingway. God, it was the other one that, forget that, John Steinbeck. Yeah, so my writing style, as you read my writing, you may notice there's influences in there of Hemingway and Steinbeck and Jack London. That's for a reason, because that's who I read. I read those writers to give me my style of writing, my voice, so that when you read my books, like The Bamboo Chest or So You Want to Be a Reality TV Star, and I think you should be reading both books now, because you're in a situation now that you're going to be traumatized. Because remember, the whole objective of this is to get us to a point we start thinning each other out. How does that happen? The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. I'm going to put a link also to Behold a Pale Horse. The two books you need to be reading right now is The Great Taking by David Rogers Webb, and the other one is Behold a Pale Horse. You need to be reading both of those books. There are a bunch of other books. To remember what we were like before all this crap was happening, Henry George and his book, Progress to Poverty. I'll have a link for that book too. Those are books you should be really putting deep in your mind to see what's happening and how it's happening. And I'm trying to get across to you the why it's happening. It's a battle between evil and light. And it's where do you come out from this? It's atheists who play religious, where they use religious connotation in order to bring about political change. Remember, the ones who truly believe in God say that God will bring this about, and we follow. But the atheists, the Zionists, they're bringing it about. They're going to make it happen. So they're using the apocalypse to bring about what they want, which is a thinning of the population, regaining control of the slaves, and destruction of civilization. But I agree with two things. I agree with David Rogers Webb, which is that this is a great quote. These people are evil, but they're not particularly creative. And you've heard me talk about that for frickin' episode upon episode at episode. I first heard it from him today in this one interview. It's fantastic. Because that's what it is. I've told you. These people are not creative. They rely on people like you and me, the common person, to be creative, because we still have a connection to God. God comes through us. Whatever God we may pray to religiously. Remember, religion and spirituality are two different things. Spirituality means you're just connected to God. Religion is the practice of how to hopefully connect to God, depending on what religion you follow, right? But these people, they don't have a connection to any God except maybe the dark side, which would be Baal and Moloch, and whoever else it might be. Who would it be in the Hindu? It'd be Shakti, right? No, Kiva. No, Kali. Yeah. The goddess of the thuggies, right? People went around killing people in the night. Remember, everything has light and balance on this planet. When we die, we go to the light or we go down to the darkness. But while we're here, we walk within the circle of life. The circle of life is light and dark, death and life, death and birth. And these people, again, these people are evil, but they are not particularly creative. That's what David Rogers Webb said in his interview. As I read his book, you can watch the video. I'm going to put links to his video. Go watch his video with the great taking. He put a lot of time, and he put a lot of time in the same way that I do. I'm not getting any money. Well, I'm getting a few coffees from you. For those of you who are following me on Substack and you pay for it, thank you very much. Or you send me, a private donation on Venmo, and I've put links in there in my description and also in my first pinned comment for you if you want to go and follow that to thank me. But David Rogers Webb, he's got all the money he needs. I've got all the money I need. And when you really understand the truth about money, quote, fiat currency, we're not talking about gold and silver, but let's say fiat currency, you have more than enough. And when you understand that, they can't steal it from you. And if you have land, like we have, you know that they can't steal it from you. They will try to steal it from you. But see, this is the part that I don't think David Rogers Webb goes to because he doesn't have the background of physically fighting for your life. And most people who have never had to fight for your life, and he's right about something he makes, is the people, because he was trying to get people to meet him in South Dakota, in Oklahoma, in Tennessee, and now there's a bill that they're trying to push in Tennessee. But people are not willing to go and fight now because you don't have the wolf at the door yet. Or actually, you don't realize you don't have the wolf in your living room yet. The wolf is coming through the door. Let me tell you, the wolf is already past the door. It is coming in. The question is whether you're with your back up against the wall and the thing is trying to rip your throat out. And that's a sad fact. I've said this before. People don't start fighting until their kids start dying. Why is that saying? The state of conflict and war, except for people who are conditioned to do that, like people who become soldiers and who are warriors. I am a warrior. You can't take the war. You can take the warrior out of the war, but you can't take the warrior out of the man or the woman. You know what the fight is, and see that's why we recognize the war. We recognize the fight. For those of us who came back and realized all the bullshit, that the wars that we fought in all these other countries, and they say, well, it's so that we don't fight in this country. That's true. But who does that make more afraid? Is it the people who are the citizens, or is the people who have enslaved the citizens? That's what they're cautioning about. Because they're afraid, and they're rightfully afraid, because what they've done is they've created debt for all of us. And they do it through lies, like the IRS, and the fact that you don't have to pay your taxes. That every time you pay your taxes, federal income taxes, I'm not talking about state taxes, those are totally different. Federal income tax is a lie. And if you want to test it like I haven't paid taxes, federal income taxes, since the year 2000. Why? Because I found out the truth. First it started with a lawyer, but then I factually found out how it's done in order to make it totally legal, which is you make a statement of fact, which is you are exempt. remember when you fill out at HR, you're exempt. They cannot take your, but they're stealing legally from you, right? No, they're not. They're stealing from you through subterfuge. They're stealing from you by creating a lie. That's why I say death and taxes. They take something which is, this is the thing about using myth. You remember what I told you about propaganda? Propaganda, and that's why I say that General John, Professor John, Mr. Fake Professor, the information he's giving you on how this is playing out and all the participants, those are factual. That's solid info. But he's doing it. It aids the Chinese, the CCP. How do you know this? Because that's the only way he's able to continue what he's doing in a country where it's illegal to have YouTube. How does somebody who lives in China broadcast to the world unless he's sanctioned by the nation that says that YouTube is illegal for their citizens? Think about that. Where all the people that I know who like to have YouTube, they have to get a VPN in order to freaking skirt it. Or you're going to say, oh, well, he's skirting it. He's a Chinese national. But don't shoot the messenger. The reason is because 80% of the information he's giving you is factual. And it's the same way, but here's being used against you, which is death and taxes. Death is a surety. And it's not to be something to be afraid of, because we all die. We will all die. There's that old joke, nobody gets out of here alive. Nobody, except these psychos with money who think they're going to try and beat it. So yeah, they gain a few more years through whatever stuff that they're buying that takes them out of the equation for the rest of the people who can't quote afford it. But they're using a surety, which is death, and then they say death and tax. So the taxes, you have to pay your taxes. Well, there are taxes that actually help the community, which is like, the taxes you pay for the roads in your county and your property taxes. And if they're not, it's up to you to go and change that. That's the whole idea of this country. And actually, it didn't just start in this country. There were laws and freedoms that were in the UK, but they were stolen from them by each new monarchy that kept on coming in. And as this cabal had more and more power to enslave the people, this group of people, the Rothschilds, the Illuminati, the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome. The Club of Rome is actually where the real death cults start getting going. They're the ones that said the population of humanity has to be thinned out. And that's what they're doing. That's what they're preparing to do. That's what this whole facade, this bullshit about famine. Remember, perceived? What's the difference between perceived and reality? Doesn't matter. Perceived is just as factual and will have the same effect. It's kind of like people who are wounded, and it might be superficial, but then they die. Why? Because they believe they're going to die. There are people who actually will die because they believe. And then there are other people who have horrific wounds, and you think, man, this person is not going to make it out. And guess what? They not only make it out, like I've told you about my friend Colonel Bates. He had his whole freaking lung blown out when an AK-47 round hit the ceramic plate. And he said if I didn't have the ceramic plate, I would have been fine because it would have just been through and through. But it hit that ceramic plate, turned into a freaking hand grenade, blew out his left lung. So he ends up coming back from that and is medically discharged from the Marine Corps. But he loves the Marine Corps so much, he improves himself. His actual other lung that was still left actually is twice the size on the other side. And he's actually able to do PT, and he was known by the company, his Marine company, for actually leading the runs. That's incredible. That shows what can happen when you put your mind and your heart towards something and you draw. The energy is available to everybody. The divine energy. That's what keeps people through. People ask me, how did I get through prison in Vietnam? How did I get through Central America? How did I get through the times that I thought I was going to die? I mean, shoot. One time I woke up, in a bomb crater. And I was taken prisoner. And I got back from that. How did I wrote about it for Skill Set magazine. How did I get back from that? I talked about it to the hog at the hog stand. I talked about how I got back from that. I was invited to give a talk to graduating snipers at the Hogs Den in Kaneohe in Hawaii. There is the wherewithal within all of you as long as you are thinking critically. And it takes a lot now because they've done so much to steal our education. They've been doing it since 1910. Remember I told you it was 1935, I thought, when what's his name? Norman Dodd had talked about how they were actively going to go and take our history. That's when they started taking our history. But the way that they were teaching us was modified in 1910, and that's why a lot of teachers were let go, because they wouldn't teach that type of curriculum. That curriculum was created by the General Education Board in 1910 with a grant from John D. Rockefeller. Yeah, that guy is so fucking evil when you think about the things. Or the idea that enslaved the American people so that we have to rely on fossil fuels. That's another one. I give you in the links in a previous episode to listen to Colonel Fletcher Prouty talk about that. People are coming forward. David Webb coming forward, telling you from an economics and finance understanding from Wall Street. Let me give you a quick of my understanding of Wall Street. I come back from Vietnam, 1984. I go get a job at International Trading Group. So, you want to find out about anything at a company? What's the best job? Quick, what's the best job to get at a company? If you're going to go and find out everything. 3, 2, 1. Yes, become the mail boy. Become the mail clerk. ITG, International Trading Cup. Oh, yeah. I read this. Yeah, major commodity options. So I got a job as a mail clerk at ITG. And so I'm meeting, all the CEOs, because I'm going from office to office. I'm getting all the secrets. Because everybody talks to the mail guy because he's just insignificant, right? Yeah. And I was only 19. So I was young. Shoot, remember when I was 19 and you look at the picture of me here in combat? Everybody says, man, you look like you're freaking 16. Yeah, I was 21, 22 right there. But yeah. Oh, man, the Los Angeles Times one? Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is March 5th, 1991. The lead. One of the largest commodity fraud cases in U.S. history ended in federal court Monday with the founders of International Trading Group agreeing to settle with Customers and Commodity Futures Trading Commission. These fuckers stole from their clients $400 million their clients lost. Quote. So I was working at the San Mateo. They had 3 out. One was in Fairfield, the other one was in San Mateo, the other one was in San Francisco. So they sent me up to San Francisco to do a day's work. So I'm up at the San Francisco office, and I'm seeing a freaking trader on the phone. He's yelling in the phone at his client. I'm thinking to myself, if you call me and talk to me in that manner, click. Remember when we had landlines? Yeah, so this is the 80s, right? So he's yelling at this guy. So he's intimidating this guy to give him money. So basically, he's acting like the fucking mafia. That turned me off so much off all Wall Street, and thankfully it did. So every time when I was working in Silicon Valley, the reason I didn't lose my shirt like everybody else did is every time that I got my options matured, because boom, I'd stayed at the company just in time, I grabbed those options and I freaking dusted them off and got rid of them quickly. Because I didn't have any faith in Wall Street. You got people right now who still have faith in Wall Street, and that's where we're going to talk about the Seneca. For those of you who don't really get what's happening, it's the Seneca cliff or the Seneca paradox. And it's a paradox because everybody's continuing. You look at Wall Street and it's like, bang, man, we're making more money. Yeah, the stocks are going up. What happens is, it's just like this favorite quote that I have from freaking Hemingway. Remember, I love Hemingway. But this is my favorite one when it comes to stocks. And that is... It's who was it? It's Mike and where is that? Let's see. Yeah, here it is. So it's the scene. It's in The Sun Also Rises. The book is The Sun Also Rises, right? And it says so Bill asks. He asked Mike. He says so. Mike was the guy who was had all the money, and he was going invited, to all these dinners, all that kind of stuff. He was a World War I veteran, etc. He says, "How did you go bankrupt?" Bill asks. He says, "2 ways," Mike said. "Gradually and then suddenly." "What brought it on?" Question mark. "And friends," said Mike. "I had a lot of friends, false friends. Then I had creditors, too. Probably had more creditors than anybody in England." Yeah. Creditors. That's how this shit's going to go down. Because things that you thought you owned, because you have title, according to David Webb, you don't own it. Because it's still considered collateral to the company that you bought it from. Think about that. And that's because of the U.S. Act that was created in 1994. And hopefully I'll be able to actually do an interview with Dave Webb shortly. But this is where we're at right now. We've gone back in the circle. Remember what he says? It's like these are evil people, but they're not creative. Yeah, so they rehash. They have a manual. They have a book. And they just bring out the book and says, okay, what chapter are we back on again? What section do we go back on to? Is it depression, war, or prosperity after the war that we use everybody and use all their creativity to make all this wealth? And the whole idea is that we're in control of this. And the way they're in control is they hijack things, remember? Redirect. So they cause events. You can't control things. You'd wipe yourself out. So all they do is they get things in motion. And hopefully, there are sane people who keep it from fulfilling. Like the one that I've been saying is they're trying to get this Iran war into the apocalypse. And the way they can get this into the apocalypse is you throw 5 to 10 nukes. You get 5 to 10 nukes, as I've said, you get it up in the air, and then you got a nuclear winter, because that's just enough. See, it's not like a full planet killer. It's just enough to give you like a Krakatoa experience. You remember what happened when Krakatoa blew? Sent up by that material, and then there was like unexpected kind of like winter and everything because of the cloud cover and everything. It wasn't cloud cover, it was debris cover. Because it all gone in the hemisphere. Well, that's what you're doing. You're manufacturing with these nukes is to get the material up in the air, and then people can't plant. And when people can't plant, or more importantly, they've already been working on that one because they've dumbed you down, so you don't even have the abilities that your grandfather, your grandparents had, or your parents had. Remember, my father was born in 1930, so he went through the Great Depression. And his war was Korea, the forgotten war. My war was a secret war. So you don't know what happened in Central America. All you got was the Iran-Contra. Did you ever wonder about the Iran-Contra? Why is it that you have Iran-Contra? You have Iran-Contra because these people are trying to freaking pay for this war because they're not going with the MiC. See, all the other wars, they were controlled by the MiC. So Reagan was trying to fight communists. But the sick and twisted thing is that we're both being bankrolled by the same people. The cabal is the one that created the communists. Have you ever wondered why we never took over Cuba? I have a friend who was waiting on a ship. He's long dead now. But he was waiting on a ship. He was a Marine, Korean War veteran, right? So he was on a ship during the Bay of Pigs. What was supposed to happen was the Cubans landed, they began the fight, and then the Marines would land to support, along with air cover. There was also, a B-25? Prouty talks about that. That was totally renovated to go and support the Bay of Pigs attack. That would have been over. So why was it not over? You should think about that. Why are we in a war in Iran right now, 40 years after it should have been done? What's happening now, if they were supposed to do it to really save the world and help the world, they would have done it right after the Ayatollah came in, right when we had the hostages, Right after the hostages came in, boom, the U.S. should have just come straight in. They didn't have the wherewithal to do anything. Why would you wait 40 years? You wait 40 years because you make a situation where you can't win that war. We win wars and lose wars at the dictates of the cabal. Unless you can play little games, which is you have a secret war. So we won the war in Central America nobody knows about. And everybody thinks that, oh, that's why you got these GWAT guys who think, oh, well, we fought in GWAT, so we have a lot more combat experience than you do. I said, I bet you don't have more than mine. Because those of us who were in paramilitary, yeah, we weren't restricted under the regulations that restrict a standing military. Because that's the kind of war we had. And think about it, that's the only one we could win. Because all the other ones, and look what happened in Afghanistan. So that was another war that was designed. Why are these wars happening? So the wars that we win are kept secret, so people don't know about that, which was Central America. And I thought Korea was, but that was already set up at the end of World War II. If you listen to Prouty tells you they were already sending gear to South Korea to get ready to fight the Soviet-led side of it. How would you know about this? Because you're in control of both sides. You're the one bankrolling. You're the Rothschilds. You're the Rockefellers. You're the Carnegies. You're stealing the education, dumbing down the people. You get them emotionally tied to something, and you get a belief system. You get a belief system, and it's like a bulldog. You cannot get that dog to get off. Look at all the shit that you're seeing. I'm losing friends like crazy on Facebook because I don't fucking believe in this fucking crap that's happening in Iran because I know it's another charade. It's a total charade, and it's in order to destroy the United States. They are redistributing the wealth to another side. I've been telling you, they're moving it down to South America. They're moving it down to Patagonia for the new Palestine under the Plan Andina. That's what that's all about. In the same way, we had a debt. That's the only thing that's going to save this country. And it's not going to be peaceful. Remember, if we could have voted in the independence of the United States and to have more rights for the free citizens of, quote, the colonial British colonies, Benjamin Franklin would have done it at Parliament. They laughed in his face. And it was when he came back, he says, we're done. And that's what began the actual fighting. What that was a debt default. They put us into debt. We were prosperous up until that point. And why were we prosperous? We were prosperous because really there were no employees. There were business owners. Everybody was a business owner. The guy who collected people's trash from their homes. The person who built horseshoes. The blacksmith. The farrier who came and worked on the horses. They had their own businesses. They were hired out. They had skills. That's why I tell you about being prepared. Get educated. Real education means that you have a strategic asset. A strategic asset is a skill. Horseshoeing, putting in a water well, fixing motors. Mechanics are going to be gold. Fabricators. If you have a lathe, I mean, that is one of I've bitched about freaking kilchers, over the hill. With Alaska Last Frontier, they're just over the hill, right? I've told you about that. They filmed the show. It's just total bullshit. But Otto Kilcher, who freaking I despise. But the thing about it is, he's actually freaking, if you were to give him something, he could actually fabricate something. He could be talking to you while he's running a lathe. And he can do finite skills of fabrication. That guy's going to be freaking gold. People are going to go to him and say, hey, can you build me this? I need this. I need a special rod for my vehicle. I got to replace it because I can't buy it from the company. The corporation's gone. If we have a total civilization collapse, I've been saying this over and over, and I think I'd like to talk with David Webb about this. Does he believe this is actually a civilization buster, not just a economic depression? I think it's a civilization buster because of all things that have happened that we've gotten here to. And I'm getting the hint that he's saying that, yeah, that this will actually be self-destruction for the elites too. They don't realize that when you get rid of too many of the slaves, you have to go out and work your plantation yourselves. And the worst part is you don't have the wherewithal and the skills and the physical strength to do it because you've been living off the backs of everybody else. So then you just die like everybody else. It's kind of like what happened during the plague. You know, that was one of the things that was so surprising about the plague, is it wiped out these wealthy elites. There were so many families, those names aren't even around anymore. They got wiped out for two reasons. One is the plague that took out a lot of their workers, but also was affecting the elites themselves. They were getting sick, right? That's how we learn about like pandemics. And the question is, was it contrived back then too? Or was it contrived and designed as it is now? The four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? One of them is plague. If you control these, you control the apocalypse. You control the apocalypse, you can have a big apocalypse that wipes everybody out, and you can have a gauged apocalypse that takes out just the 2/3 of the world's population, or 3/4 of the population, and then you're left with everybody else. And that hopefully that's a small enough number that you can control them and have them subjugated under your control. That's what this is about. Remember, they have all the money. They have all the wealth. They don't need any money. That's why I've always said, what do you buy that's that old question they used to have, which is, what do you buy the wealthiest man in the world? Not money. You don't give him, you don't need power. That's the only thing you give them. So whatever power you could give them. And power is delivered in various ways. One is physical power. Physical, which is subjugation of people in chains. But then the most powerful one is to subjugate their minds. You subjugate their minds. You don't even have to do anything. All you have to do is initiate an anchor. You initiate a mental anchor, and boom, suddenly they fall in line. Wave a flag. Blow up some towers. Bomb Pearl Harbor. Show a letter from Germany to Mexico. A headline from the yellow journalist himself, William Randolph Hearst. Remember the Maine! They play you, people. Don't be played. That's how you separate yourself. And then understand what money really is. What is money? Money is actually trust. It's a trust in this piece of paper, which there's no trust in it because it says Federal Reserve. It doesn't say US banknote. When it starts saying US note again, I'll have a little bit more trust in it. Until then, and we still have the Federal Reserve note, and we're paying private bankers. Go read. They don't lie to you. They have no secrets. That's part of the game. They enjoy that. They enjoy fucking lying to your face, but they're not lying. They love manipulating you and showing what they're doing, and the idea that you are the sheeple. They love sheeple. That's where they get it. And when the sheep will run across the pasture and then run across the pasture, that gives them an energy. You know, it's like Webb is talking about. It's like the idea they can get away with this stuff. It makes them feel good. Because they're evil motherfuckers. So go further into understanding how they're going to take your stuff. Go read David Roger Webb's book. If you don't have the time for that, I'm still going through it. I mean, I had to go and watch the video for the third time again because there's so much even in the video when he talks about stuff. And it's kind of cool because he has a very similar background to me. And we both, and this is the reason I want to interview him, is because we have done the same thing at the same time for different reasons. Or from how we come into it. Let's put it that way. So we see the effect, 2008, right? So I look at it from the idea that like, ooh, food scarcity, because here I am in San Francisco living in Nob Hill. Not a cheap place to be living, where you would expect that, you know, this would not be affected by the price of fuel. See, remember they cry. It's just like David Icke talks about. Was it problem, reaction, PRS, problem, reaction, solution. They come up with this problem, reaction, solution. You know, it's the it goes to a Latin phrase, which is PRS. Let's look that up again. Problem, reaction. See what comes up on that. Solution. Out of order chaos. Out of order chaos. Yes. KO. That's where I put it. But I like the Latin term. Order ab KO or chao. I don't want to say chow. Ravens. Got to watch out, those Eagles. And out of order, chaos. Yeah. Freaking people. Yeah, order out of chaos. Yeah, order out of chaos. So they create the problem. They create the chaos, get you to react to it. You've already been imprinted by symbols and visual anchors, like the towers coming down, Pearl Harbor being attacked, the Maine blowing up, the Zimmerman letter. Zimmerman? Yeah. All of these. Oh, and that's so why did the author in Germany actually admit that he wrote that letter? Other than to incite the Americans to get into it. Who told him it was a good idea? So it automatically brings in the United States. So now they're going to have to deal with this big, rested aggressor. Because it's played. They're playing this game. It's like Monopoly, except you don't get to take anything home. It's all to take all the goods. So read David Webb's book. Watch his video. Again, as I said, I put all the links. I give you my sources. I'm not here just to freaking stroke myself. I'm here to make sure you have the information that I have and you make your decisions, hopefully critically, because what I'm trying to do is to get you to think critically. Look at these things. If you feel hopeless, that's not thinking critically. What that's saying is that you have actually thrown away all your genetic lines ability to survive against chaos, because you're not the first one on this. This is not your genetic line's first rodeo. If it was, you wouldn't be here because you would have been wiped out. You have a genetic line that goes back thousands of years. Go within yourself and ask yourself, how would my ancestors have dealt with this if they dealt with something like this? I'm imploring you to reach back to your history. You are alive because there's a genetic line that got you through this. And prior catastrophes and chaos and wars and famines and plagues, you survived. I survived. I reached back to my ancestors. I pray to God. I thank my ancestors to give me what I have. I carry it. The Swiss Army knife is my body. Your Swiss Army knife is your body. It's your mind. It's your intellect. It's like learning a language. Yes, we haven't had time to do that one. It's actually involved. But once you learn how to learn languages, you can learn any language quickly for the same reason, which is one of the most important things of learning a language is to not just spout, but to actually be asked questions. That's when you improve. That's actually with anything. You want to get good at something? Teach it. If you have to teach it, that means you have people asking you questions. That's how you can improve. Anything and everything. You get basis on reading about it. That's why you've got the book by David Rogers Webb. The Great Taking. You got his video. The Great Taking. Go watch them. Links again. First pinned comment. It's there so that you can benefit from this. I'm putting this information so that you can survive this. And I'm giving it to you in the manner that I'm giving it to you because it's not all on me. Because if I'm just giving this, you're just going to regurgitate it. It's going to get into your mind and you think, oh, that was entertaining, and you go on with your life. The key is for you to ask questions and go, oh, maybe I should go and look at what he's got in his first pinned comment that he does in all his episodes. It's to get you down the road of your own discovery. Because you need to become curious. Become curious. Your survivability will come about through your curiosity, not through your ignorance, not through your laying back and taking it. That's one of the problems I've told you repeatedly about the problem of communicating through YouTube. We're not in a classroom. We're not even at a party or a bar or a dinner or an activity where we can talk and you can respond to me and I can talk back. I mean, the closest we have are the questions that you put in the comments, and I try to get them as I try to get through them. And I still have a lot of questions. I know that as I get to them, I get to them. Because right now, everything's happened so fast. And I'm trying to get this information to you as quickly as possible. Because you need to prepare. And hopefully you've already been preparing. If you got a bunker where you are, bunker where you are. If you can get your own land and if you're in the urban and you can get into a rural setting, hot-foot it over there. And get that land and get set. Thursday, I'm going to do an interview with E.J. Snyder, good friend of mine. Remember? Naked and Afraid. Almost lost his balls in this last episode that he was in. He was telling me all about that. I said, you fucking nut. He got skewered with a stick right in freaking his groin. I mean, that job. But he's a good man. He's trying to help you. But we had some real serious conversations. Because he's basically going to say something that I've said to you, and I hate to say this to you, there's some of you that will not make it. You aren't prepared. You will not make it. And everything else is, you might as well watch freaking Disney movies and use that as a painkiller. Because you either have just given up and you don't have a fight in you. And I understand that. There's a point where you just say, you know what? Hey, I'll let go and let God. And I do that every day. I do what I can, and then you got to let the rest go. Even when I give this information to you. A lot of you will just fucking ignore this. A lot of you will just keep this to yourself. A lot of you won't even comment. You won't even put a like. You won't even share this with people that you care about. Because maybe you don't want to be thought of as nuts. Or maybe you don't want to be thought of as depressing. And you don't want to share bad news with other people. It's only bad news if you don't do a damn thing about it. I'm not depressed. I'm in the fight. How can you be depressed if you're in the fight? I'm in the fight. I'm communicating to you. And then when I'm done here, and I'm done editing this, because I realize I'm going to have to pop in videos and visuals on this, because so you can actually see what I'm talking about. I got to go out and freaking feed my birds. This morning I got a bunch of snow off of here. Like I said earlier, this is like there's so much crappy snow that I can't wait to plant. I showed you in the last episode all the new plants I'm going to be putting out there. The blueberries and the raspberries, and we got some hazelnut trees that came in. What else has come in? A bunch of other stuff that's going to do well. Perennials. I'm really into perennials. You plant it once, and then nature will take its course as long as you protect it. So I have to make sure that the frickin' moose don't chew it down. Just like when I have the apple trees that are in the high tunnels, I'm going to take those apple trees that I matured. That's how I've sped up the process. So I'm not waiting 5-10 years for it to get to a point where it actually looks like a tree. It's actually a tree right now because I put it in for 2-3 years in the high tunnel. So it has a longer. So see, everything has an ability to beat, right? How is it that I can be 62 years old and I'm as strong, except for injuries related to combat, that I am in pretty good fitness, that I can pass my physical, and I can load frickin' a moose into a beaver and fly hunters out of an area. If you ever had to load a frickin' moose from a bunch of hunters, and maybe they have 2 moose, so it's like you got to come back and do it again, and then fly the hunters out on floats on a beaver, yeah, it sucks. I prefer the people who just want to go camping, because then they have a little bit of gear and they just leave, and I drop them off and they can go. But you got to physically be able to do it. I've done that. I've showed you how, like, use the 10-in-1 mushroom mix. I add that in, man. I'm feeling amazing nowadays. Even more so than before. I told you how I use noromectin to deal with pain. Noromectin, what is that? Oh, that's the I word we're not supposed to talk about, but it's for animals. And why do I use that one instead of the one for humans? Because I don't trust the pharmaceutical companies right now, because I've heard so much that maybe the stuff that's made for people is not as good as the stuff that's made for the livestock. Why is that? Because the elites don't want their frickin' prime rib and filet mignon to disappear. But people, and they can profit. Remember, there's good business in death. These people love making money off of death. Whether it's through your food, through your medicine, through your education. If they dumb you down so you're easier to kill, if they make you sick by your food, then they profit when they send you to the hospital. So they got you on the double whammy. I mean, you talk about the MIC, the military industrial complex, being the big money maker, the self-licking ice cream cone. That's nothing. Yeah. So now when I say the MIC, 9 times out of 10, I'm actually referring to the medical industrial complex. Yeah. Oh, I know about all that stuff. That's interesting too, because that's what I like about Webb. Is just like, he was supposed to be an engineer. I was supposed to be an engineer. Father was an engineer. I wanted to do medicine. So one of the deals the agency said they were going to do is they were actually going to get me all set up and everything, and I'd have everything paid for with my education after I survived everything in Central America. Yeah, they bailed on that fucking bullshit too. Remember, the agency's based on who the administration's in. So if you go from Reagan to Bush, who was a fucking total scumbag, that's the guy that told us to keep our mouth shut. Yeah, because he wanted the New World Order, in his own words, the New World Order, to continue after the fall of the Soviet Union. Which, it just fell because of economics. No, because we were actually in a freaking full hot war with these people for 80 years. And when did that start? Oh, under Wilson. When Wilson sent the Polar Bear Brigade. Who was the Polar Bear Brigade? History, people. History. That's why I try to share history with you. The Polar Bear Brigade was a brigade from Michigan that was sent to Russia to aid the Brits and I think the French against the Bolsheviks. Arkhangelsk was one of the villages they were at. They're on both sides, on Kamchatka side and on the St. Petersburg side. Remember, the capital of Russia was St. Petersburg before Moscow. When the Soviets took over, when the Bolsheviks took over, it was moved to Moscow. History. They don't want you to know history. That's why in 1935 they were actively attacking. They created the American Historical Association, the Carnegie Foundation, the Carnegie Endowment. You know this if you read the Reese Committee report. You know this if you watch the video where G. Edward Griffin interviews Norman Dodd. That's one of the most important interviews. I will put that one down again. I'll put Prouty and I'll put Dowd along with David Webb's. Watch them. They've been doing this for centuries. Each nation, they do it. They, dumb slaves. That's what they want us to be. We had moments of enlightenment. We had a great experiment. They stole that experiment from us. Even with different presidents, real presidents, not the shit that we have now. Not the actors. Not the play actors that are placed. I mean, even Kennedy, JFK was placed until he had a coming to God, and then they freaking whacked his ass. But Lincoln, he was a real president, and they whacked his ass. And Andrew Jackson, they tried to whack his ass twice. Good old Andy. And I don't like the idea he did the Trail of Tears, right? Remember, light and dark. Within everything, there is light and dark on this planet. So it's a question, what can you deal with and what can you not deal with? Can you deal with what's in the don't say that word, the PDF files? The Epstein PDF files? Yeah. I've read those things, people. I've shared some of that with you. God, the one that I was just everybody in the special operations community, I'm getting it back now. I've shared it with people. They can't, with Dick Marcinko and all the crap that he was into. He was actually on a competitive level with Epstein in terms of the type of blackmail he was up to. And everything that happened down in Mexico with the ambassador under Obama. This is the world this is the society that we are in. It's the cleaning of the society and then the government will clean up. It's not from the top down. If the society crumbles and has been so contaminated by such evilness, then what do you expect from the administrations you have above you? We have to reset, people, and the question is how it's going to reset. And I don't think people are going to like it because they're waiting. They're waiting until their children start dying. As I've said, Webb is like, why is it that they didn't pass these things? He tried to pass it legally. He tried to pass it through the bills. I'm waiting. I'm curious. I'm going to contact that senator that he mentioned from Tennessee and see how that's going. It's been 2 months since that episode that I last saw with Webb. But the question is it going to get across? And that it comes down to people understanding, are you going to wait until the wolf is at your throat and your back is against the wall, or are you going to shoot while the wolf is coming through the door? You pick. On that note, God bless. Again, look at the links that I put in the first pinned comment below. Follow them. It's there for you to edify yourself, to educate yourself, and to further flesh out the information I can never give to you in even a 2-day video. This is the long term. Be patient, but continue walking. You can't run until you first start crawling. You can't walk until you start crawling. If you don't even make the attempt to crawl, you can't walk or run. I want you to be in the same state that I am. I'm at peace. Everything's good. Every evening I can tell my significant other, my loved ones, I said, we are so fucking lucky. I want you to be able to tell your loved ones and tell yourself, we are so fucking lucky. Because we planned. 2008, 2009, that's the same time. David Webb and I both realized the problem and began doing something about it. Preparing. I was not going to stay in San Francisco. I'm not a freaking country boy. I come from country people. Shoot, my ancestors on one line came on the Mayflower. On the other one, they came on the Pennsylvania farmer from Ulster. The typical Scots-Irish history of the revolutionaries in the South Carolina and North Carolina, the Kings Mountain Boys, the Over Mountain Boys. Those are my people. They scrabbled everything out of the wilderness. You have a history too. And I've been telling you, reach back. Thank them for the genetic life that they gave you because you are here. Doesn't matter what color you are, black, white, Asian, whatever. You're alive because somebody in your ancestry did the right thing at the right time. But we're in a situation right now, you can't keep on running. We have a propensity within our society to take the easy way out, which is to run. You can't stop running because you get to a point where you keep on running and you find out you get into a box canyon. You get into a box canyon, you get your back against the wall. You get your back against the wall, you got the wolf at your throat. When you could have just freaking taken out that wolf with one shot. Learn to shoot. On that note, God bless. Share it with your friends. Like and subscribe. Do everything you can to get this information to people. It's not my information. I'm just sharing this information with you. I have my personal experiences. I told you about my experiences with Wall Street. And seeing how that guy was fucking stealing $400 million. What was his name? Bear. David Bear. And he still had the rest of that article, if you want to Google it. ITG, San Mateo. Type in probably like 400 million. You'll also see that he got his 30-room mansion in Portola Valley. Yeah, that's where the real money is in the Bay Area. Let me tell you, I know. Whew. Heavy days. But it's how you get through it. You wondered how I got through combat. You wondered how I got through prison. I got through it by having an attitude of positivity, focus, and doing something. I worked out in my cell, even though I was in solitary confinement. I worked out in my cell. I was in the most incredible shape, even though I was in prison. And I lost 50 pounds. I was in freaking lean fighting shape to the point that it was actually a quick transition for me to start covering the war in Central America and running along with commandos, with Special Forces, with Navy SEALs, and keeping up with them. Salvadoran Navy SEALs, Salvadoran LERPs, being in combat with them. So that's actually when the agency recruited me, it wasn't that hard for them to recruit me because I'd already had, like 2 years of combat experience. If you include my experiences in Laos, with the Hmong, with the Khmer Rouge, in El Salvador, in Nicaragua. I was around these people, so them freaking recruiting me was like, hey, you remember that guy? Yeah. That's how it happens. That's how it really happens. It's not like, ooh, into the chambers of secrecy. No. And that's actually why you should think it is so easy like that. It's not the dramas of the movie. And that's the thing. They do the dramas of the movie to make it look like it's really so special and so separate. That the guy who lives next door, the guy who's down the road, could actually be someone who's had these freaking wild experiences that you could only imagine through movies and novels. Remain focused. Remain at peace. Remain positive. This evil cabal lives off your fears and your doubts. If you believe in God, if you believe that there's good, and then you understand that because there's good on this planet, it's an even keel, there is evil. And we're in a battle between light and dark right now. Which is hard for scientists and quote, critical thinkers. They think they're critical thinkers, but not thinking critically. It's kind of like people say that they're atheists. You can't say you're an atheist. You might say you're an agnostic because you don't have any belief or understanding that there is something out there. I've just had too many experiences in my life to remind me that, yeah, there's a lot of things here that actually, because of that, I'm alive and I'm able to talk to you right now. I'm not dead like others. Realign with yourself. Thank your ancestors for having given you the genetic wherewithal and strength to be alive at this point. After all the things that could have taken your genetic line out in your historical past, going back thousands of years. Thank them. And bring it up. What is it that they could have done in this situation to combat what is happening? It seems so overwhelming. Like that big giant tidal wave I always use when I'm trying to show what this is, from that movie Final Impact. Where you have Maximilian Snell and Tina Leone, and they're all like huddling together on the beach, and the water's going out, and then suddenly the big tidal wave comes over and just takes them out. That's what it feels like, doesn't it? Yeah. How can you get out of it? Well, the smart people already planned, and they freaking got to the high ground, right? As quickly as possible, even though it was pretty late, but they still made it. And that's the thing. Even though it's the latest point, they were just ready to just go. Tina Leone and her and Maximilian Schnell's character, they had made peace with just being taken out on the beach. And if that's what you decide to do, who am I to stop you? But if you have any wherewithal to fight in the manner that I have always been a fighter, and you know that from my past, if you have that wherewithal, you know that there's something you can do. There's always something you can do. And the key is to find out what that is and then add on to it. And you can't do it yourself. A lot of people think the people who are going to make it through this are not going to be the freaking... I told you about the Lone Mountain Man, right? There was like Kit Carson, and then there's Jeremiah Johnson, Liberating Johnson. These were people who went into the wilderness, but they weren't alone. Soon, they were intermarrying into different tribes. And the tribes were the ones who shared their knowledge with them. And intermarried with them and gave them children. And made family and community. That's how you get through this. The other guys who were the loners, they went up, they made their cabin, they lived alone. Yeah, and then the next tribe came in, didn't like them, scalped them. Yeah, don't be that guy. On that note, again, God bless. Watch your six.